The United Nations General Assembly has adopted a resolution demanding that Israel end what the Assembly calls its unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory within 12 months. Israel has denounced the UN resolution, demanding that it end its occupation as, quote, cynical.
Peace and justice. You are dancing to the tune of your ringmasters, the Palestinian Authority.
Resolution passed pretty overwhelmingly. 124 member states voted in favor, 14 against. That includes the United States, Israel, Hungary, and the Czech Republic. And 43 abstained, including close allies of the United States like the United Kingdom and Canada. But again, 124 nations in favor. That includes big voting blocs like the Non-Aligned Movement and the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, among others. And as you said, this is a resolution that essentially builds on an advisory opinion given by the International Court of Justice calling Israel's expansion into the Palestinian territory since 1967 illegal. It calls the resolution calls on Israel to withdraw its troops from these occupied territories, to return control to the Palestinians, and to basically end its occupation. And this is, again, based on the ICJ's ruling. I think the most interesting comments we heard were from the abstentions, like the United Kingdom and Canada. They acknowledged their support for the International Court of Justice. The United Kingdom saying that any territory taken outside of a negotiated settlement is illegal, and calling on Israel to take concrete steps towards returning, towards negotiating a peace and returning control to the Palestinian Authority. But they said that the resolution went too far, that it was too one-sided, and because of that, they would not vote in favor of it.
Look at this picture. Look at it closely. Study it. That blood on the floor belonged to 6 beautiful human beings: Eden, Hirsch, Alex, Carmel, Ori, and Almog. That is their blood. 6 innocent Israelis executed in cold blood after months of suffering in this tiny, dirty tunnel where they couldn't even stand, hidden under a child's bedroom. Imagine that being your child, your spouse, your friend. Imagine them for a moment suffocating, starving, bleeding in a dark hole for months. If it were your child, your loved one, would you sit in silence? Would you pretend this was just another story? Or would you scream for justice?
This is a resolution calling on Israel to end its occupation that has been deemed unlawful by the International Court of Justice, end its occupation of occupied Palestinian territories within a year.
Now, I should point out that a resolution in the General Assembly doesn't carry the same weight as a Security Council vote. It does not have the same power of international law. But it carries a lot of moral authority. It shows what the world is thinking and where the world stands, and the fact that many nations are concerned about this ongoing conflict and ongoing occupation of these territories. 124 nations in favor, which is less than the 143 who voted to recognize Palestine as a full member state of the General Assembly, but still a substantial majority, and one that the Palestinians said they would be pleased with ahead of this vote.
Let me say this clearly. Jewish blood is not cheap. The days when it could be spilled without consequence are over. The days when the Jewish people were at the mercy of tyrants are over. Never again will we stand by while our people are massacred. Never again will we depend on your mercy or your judgment to protect us. Thank God that today we can defend ourselves. Today we have the strength to protect our state. Today we have the resolve to secure our future. So instead of condemning Hamas's brutal murder of over 1,200 Israelis, innocent men, women, and children, the Assembly sits silently. In place of this most basic common sense action, this circus focuses on distractions. The process that all other countries usually follow has been abandoned. Where are the negotiations, the deliberations? You have allowed the Palestinians to become the ringmasters. And those who vote for this resolution are playing their part. This resolution distorts the flawed advisory opinion of the ICJ. It ignores the truth, twists the facts, and replaces reality with fiction. It ignores completely. I didn't hear Mr. Mansour mentioning Hamas for the last 30 minutes he spoke here. It ignores the Hamas terror attack of October 7, ignores Israel's legitimate security concerns, and seeks to remove Israel's ability to protect itself. From the beginning, we all know that this process was politicized. This was not a quest for legal clarity, but a predetermined attempt to delegitimize Israel on the world stage. Let's call this for what it is. This resolution is diplomatic terrorism, using the tools of diplomacy not to build bridges, but to destroy them.
Zero immediate impact because Israel doesn't even acknowledge that it occupies Palestinian territory and the Palestinian people in general. These statements that are coming out of Israel, specifically from the foreign ministry, call this resolution, quote, fictional, one-sided, and distorted. So that just gives you an idea of where the Israeli headspace is here. The statement goes on to say that the Palestinian Authority needs to be de-radicalized if there is going to be any sort of peace, but that Israel reserves the right to do whatever it wants on its, quote, sovereign territory, and that includes, according to their statements, the occupied West Bank. These statements also go on to mention the October 7th attacks, but this UN General Assembly was about the occupation in a general sense, the occupation that has been going on for more than 76 years, that Israel is still in denial over. So the Israeli school of thought here, whenever there is any sort of UN resolution, is to say that the UN is biased, the UN is, quote, anti-Semitic. We have heard this repeatedly from Israeli delegates at the United Nations, and they often, in fact always, ignore whatever sort of resolutions come out of the United Nations, saying that they're one-sided, they're biased, they're based in a different reality. So nothing new here from the Israelis, but you can rest assured that this absolutely will not be implemented on the ground in the occupied West Bank, as Israel does not even recognize the results of this.
And what other member state is treated that way? The answer is simple: none. No other country is subjected to such relentless, obsessive abuse. You know, it's not my first term here. I started my first term at the UN in 2015. Since then, there have been 155 General Assembly resolutions condemning Israel. In the same period, there have been only 88 resolutions condemning every other country combined. Combined! Think about the last decade. Think about how many brutal regimes exist in the world. Think about the countless injustices. Yet, the only Jewish state, the only democracy in the Middle East, has been condemned almost twice as much as the rest of the world combined. This is not about justice. It is about an attempt to destroy Israel through diplomatic terrorism. Make no mistake, since October 7, the Palestinian Authority has not condemned the atrocities committed by Hamas. Not one word of condemnation from President Abbas. Not one word from Prime Minister Mustafa. Not one word from Riyad Mansour. The Secretary General of Fatah Central Committee called the October 7 massacre a defensive war full of epics and heroisms. One of the most high-ranking Palestinian officials calling the rape and murder of thousands of civilians epic and heroic. Are these our partners in peace? The PA have offered their unwavering support for Hamas, the world's most despicable terrorist organization. They are its diplomatic wing, its public face, their consiglieres. The Palestinians deserve better leadership. For decades, Hamas has spent its money digging terror tunnels, arming terrorists, and bringing ruin to its own people. Rather than building up Gaza, Hamas has obsessed over one thing: destroying Israel. While Hamas digs tunnels, the Palestinian Authority works above ground, attempting to isolate Israel internationally. There are two sides of the same coin, one attacking with rockets, the other with resolutions. The Palestinian Authority has rededicated itself to supporting the world's most vicious terrorist. This is not an entity seeking peace. It is a regime that glorifies murder while educating its people to do the same. They refuse to denounce the most horrific crimes. They celebrate the slaughter of civilians as a victory. And now, this body is considering rewarding that refusal, rewarding that evil. You are giving a false prize to false leadership. There is only one side in this conflict that promotes genocide. It is the one that promotes it publicly. Let us not forget, Hamas's own founding charter calls, and I quote, for the extermination of all Jews. They proudly proclaim their intent, and I quote, to wipe Israel off the map and hunt Jews wherever they can find them. Instead of condemning the killers, the ones who want to commit a genocide, this resolution condemns the victims. How dare they accuse us of the crimes they themselves are committed to carrying out? This resolution seeks to deflect blame for Hamas's own atrocities onto Israel, which is forced to defend itself. This resolution perfectly represents the priorities of the Palestinian Authority. It slanders Israel, ignores our right to defend our people, and seeks to isolate us. The PA has teamed up with the radicals in the region, posing a grave threat not just to Israel, but to the entire Middle East. But instead of addressing these major threats, some of you support this resolution, which demands that Israel tie its ends. History has shown time and time again that true progress only comes through direct dialogue. Israel has demonstrated this for decades. Wonderful, important peace treaties have been signed with Egypt, Jordan, with the United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, Morocco. Inshallah, there will be many more in the near future. Trying to isolate and destroy Israel brings nothing but regression. This resolution doesn't move the region forward, it drags the region backward, delaying the hope for peace and advancement. I was here on this podium 6 years ago. I stood in this hall and proposed a resolution to condemn Hamas. But instead of taking action, the Assembly chose to look the other way, allowing Hamas to continue its reign of terror. And now we are all, Israelis and Palestinians alike, suffering the consequences of your inaction. Back then you chose to support the circus over morality, and here we are again, the same circus, the same performances. But we all know what's really happening here. This is not about peace. This is not about international law. This is about posturing. In the circus of the UN, you can ignore the atrocities that took place on October 7. You can pass resolutions detached from reality. You can pretend you live on a different planet. But in the real world, outside these halls, we are doing the hard work. We are fighting terror. We are working to bring the hostages home. In the real world, there is justice and morality. In the real world, Israel will shape its own future, striving for both victory and peace. Israel will defend itself. We will not apologize for protecting our citizens. We will not stop until Hamas is dismantled, until every one of our hostages is returned, and until the terror that threatens our people is eliminated. Today, this assembly faces a choice. You can choose to stand on the side of justice, on the side of peace, on the side of those who seek real solutions to the region's challenges, or you can indulge this circus, this charade, this political theater. Israel is ready to work with the international community. We are ready to work with those committed to real peace, real security, real progress. Israel will not work with those who refuse to renounce violence and acknowledge Israel's right to exist. Whoever supports this resolution today should be ashamed of themselves. On the day when your civilians, your families, your loved ones are murdered, raped, and kidnapped, do not come to this assembly seeking justice. All you will find is silence.